All right, so we're progressing forward. Number 2, this is probably most near and dear to the hearts of the people that I love, although I'm a pretty big fan as well. This and number 5 are going to be the ones that I think people are going to get most up in arms about, although number 1's got some questionability as well. Not from my standpoint, obviously, because Lord knows I'm right. Stephen Curry is the most dynamic point guard in the game. I was going to say that he was the most dynamic point guard to ever play the game, but the sample size is still too limited, and we've seen some guys that have had amazing singular years, Tiny Archibald leading the league in both points and assists, stuff like that. But I'm not saying that he's necessarily the best point guard in the NBA. I do feel like I can make some arguments for that, but I don't feel comfortable with it right now because Chris Paul is really, really good, and he's really, really nasty defensively, which Stephen Curry's not bad defensively. He's actually a little underrated, but I think he's so gassed, he's not nearly what Chris Paul is. But I wanted to start, so people didn't get up in arms, just talking about what dynamic is. So I went ahead and looked it up in the dictionary. It's marked by usually continuous and productive activity or change. Stephen Curry averaged the most minutes per game of any point guard in the NBA. He had a really good backup point guard in Jarrett Jack. That guy's getting ready to get paid starters money. Somebody's going to overpay him and somebody's going to regret it and whatever, it happens and it's understandable. But Stephen Curry's so dynamic because you could put Jack at the 1 and you put Stephen Curry at the 2. That guy is, if somebody crossbred Allen Iverson, Steve Nash, and Reggie Miller, you're kind of working on what he's got right now. Now, I'm really, really scared about his ankles. I think there's a potential for him to be the epitome of a flash in a pan. But we're talking about this year. We're talking about what the season showed me, what I knew about the season, and the fact that he played 78 games this year, so his ankle held up. The fact that in the playoffs, he was second only, I think, to LeBron James as far as what he produced in the big moments. He loves that. He eats that up. That's Cheerios for him. Give me that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I'm sold. Stephen Curry is not scared of any of that. Everybody knows he led the NBA in three-pointers made this year, 272 three-pointers made. He shot 45% from the 3. Nobody does that. Nobody shoots that high from the percentage with that type of volume except for Ray Allen, who he surpassed, who's going to go down as maybe the best shooter ever, Larry Bird. I don't know who else I know people will make arguments for some guys that weren't around were around when the three-point line wasn't around, but I've seen some of those guys. I don't know that I feel that Ray Allen or Larry Bird is lesser than any of them. I think they're greater. And I think Steph Curry for this year, let's contextualize it, for this year was as good or better than any shooter has ever been. And that's from the point guard position. There's not another guy that we would have in the argument of best shooter that was a point guard. Jerry West was kind of a 1 and 2 slashish guy, and he was a really amazing shooter. And so I know that he deserves, and Pete Maravich also, both of those guys deserve their credit. They deserve to be in that. But what Stephen Curry did this year was really ridiculous. Ryan Anderson was second in threes. He was second in threes, and he shot 59 less threes than Curry did. And he shot 38% from the field. 7% less, 69 less threes. And that's what Ryan Anderson gets paid to do, just like Kyle Korver did. Kyle Korver, speaking of which, and Danny Green were the only other guys in the top 20 that were even at 43%. So Stephen Curry set the record. He led the NBA, and he was far and away the best and most proficient shooter at that position. Then let's talk about what he did overall. 22.9 points per game, 6.9 assists. And I'm of the belief that Stephen Curry has that rare LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Wilt Chamberlain. He's not in that class. Got a really long way to go. But he has that rare ability to lead in any statistical category he wants to, except for rebounds. Those other guys could rebound. He's a small guy. He's not able to rebound. But I've watched Stephen Curry. If Stephen Curry wants to average 12 assists per game, Stephen Curry can average 12 assists per game. If he wants to average 15 assists per game, he probably can. My dad and I saw him in Oakland when he led Davidson deep into the NCAA tournament, and I felt really comfortable going, I would take that guy in the top 4 or 5. And I know that it's not like he dropped. It's not like people didn't know that, but I knew he was going to be good. And I'm not patting myself on the back or anything like that, but I felt comfortable that he was going to be better than people thought he was going to be. What he's doing right now does not surprise me. Now, his ability to shoot the ball at such a high level would shock anybody that watches the game of basketball. Nobody does what he does. There's never been a primary ball handler that can get their own buckets the way that he does with the same level of efficiency that he does. There's plenty of guys that have been able to get to the basket. There's plenty of point guards that have been selfish scorers and stuff like that. You put him off the ball and he'll still get you 25. I don't know that you could say that about Allen Iverson. And now, granted, Eric Snow brought up the ball every once in a while, but Allen Iverson needed the ball in his hands to do that. Tiny Archibald needed the ball in his hands to do that. These are the only guys that I think are in that argument because I love Steve Nash. I think Steve Nash was really dynamic and really awesome himself, but he wasn't Steph Curry as a scorer. Steph Curry is amazing as a scorer. Now, I'm scared. I don't want to lose Steph Curry. I don't want in 15 years for us to be talking about Steph Curry the way that people talk about Gale Sayers. Like, if you had seen this guy before he got hurt, oh my God. But that's where we're at right now. He's that good. And I felt like he was that good before people knew he was that good. Now, I know that a lot of the audience that I'm hopefully speaking to is from the Bay Area, so they all knew that. But I was high on Steph. I was talking to all my friends about how Monte Ellis needed to be traded because he was an albatross. I don't know that I care for the deal only because Bogut is never going to be healthy. But you needed to open that door for Steph Curry to come through. And he came through with a flourish. He likes the stage. He's not scared of the big stage. He's like some of the other guys we've been talking about with Paul George. But more importantly, he is capable of making everybody better. He scores in a way that's very interesting. He can be a high-volume scorer and still do it within the functioning of their offense. And now I know that their offense is kind of a run and huck. It's not a run and gun. It's a run and huck. You know, if I'm within 30 feet, I'm shooting it if I'm at any position except for the 4 spot, especially when they put, except for the 5 spot, especially when they put Harrison Barnes at the 4. But he's good. He's so good. And he's so efficient. Nobody's ever that. I mean, Russell Westbrook is the only other point guard I think right now that can score the way that Stephen Curry can score. Chris Paul is amazing. I think Chris Paul is still the best scorer in the NBA. I think that if I had one game and I needed one point guard, Chris Paul's the guy. I think that he likes the stage. I think that he dictates tempo. I think that at the last 3 minutes of a game, he is nasty. He is mean. But Westbrook and Curry, I think, are the only point guards that can get me 50. But Westbrook's going to have to do it in a far more less efficient way. And Westbrook is going to make his teammates dislike him for those stretches. If Russell Westbrook feels like he's going, he might come down and shoot 10 straight jump shots. He might do that. Stephen Curry might not do that. If he breaks a guy down and the help side defense comes, he's going to throw a dime. He is far and away a superior passer to Russell Westbrook. He's not the defender. He doesn't get to the bucket, but I'll take him over Russell Westbrook just from this year. I'm really, really scared of the ankle. It terrifies me. But he's so good. I mean, he was second to Chris Paul amongst field goal percentage, as far as the guys that we're talking about, he's more efficient than Darren Williams. And I think that Darren Williams, everything is based on a seasonal thing as far as this goes. And Darren Williams, I think, is better than what we saw from him this year. He was obviously hurt. He kind of pulled it together towards the end of the season. But there's some stuff going on in New Jersey that's weird. I think New Jersey has the potential to be the LA Dodgers right now. I don't know that they're ever going to be able to pull together that talent because it's not cohesive. And Darren Williams has a tendency to be kind of bratty is probably an appropriate term, although it seems a little harsh, but I think it's fair. Steph Curry's not like that. That Warriors team loves each other. They love playing together. They're fun to watch. I've hated the Golden State Warriors are like San Antonio Spurs with me. I lived here as well. I had to hear everybody kind of emphasize how good they supposedly were because they had that one run when they beat the Mavericks. This team's fun. And they like each other, and he is the firebrand for that. He is the main guy. He's so much fun to watch, and he's so infectious. You know, when I was talking earlier about Joakim Noah maybe being the most infectious guy out or most dictative guy outside of LeBron James, Steph Curry might be third in that. He and Chris Paul are in that same argument. But I don't know that there's anybody ahead of those guys. When you watch him, he can dominate